In Washington, the Supreme Court begins its new term today. Some of the cases to watch on the upcoming docket will cover gun rights, social media, and abortion pills. I want to bring in CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford to talk more about the court's term. Jan, I've missed you.
Hi, Jan.
We don't get a chance to talk to you until the Supreme Court gets back in session.
It's the first Monday in October, so here we go.
Okay, so what can you tell us about some of the big cases to watch this term?
Well, I think we have to think about the term right now. It's just a snapshot. The justices have a number of cases they've already put on their docket that are important, but not the kind of hot-button social issue cases that we've seen in the past 2 years. Remember, it was just 2 years ago they overturned Roe versus Wade, and then followed that up the next term by banning affirmative action in college admissions. We don't have those kind of massive social media cases right now, but they're going to continue adding cases to their docket as this term progresses through the fall and winter. So that's where I think we're really going to see something interesting going on. I mean, we just heard former President Trump speaking there. I mean, they could have cases this term on questions surrounding some of those trials, surrounding whether or not he could even be on the ballot if he's convicted. So, you know, you could see the court getting mired into the presidential election. You also mentioned that case on abortion pills. That case is on the horizon. The court hasn't taken it yet, but everyone thinks that they're going to. The Biden administration is urging them to. So that one's probably going to be out there, and that looks at whether or not a lower court ruling restricting the availability of the most commonly method of abortion is lawful. So, you know, this could be one of those major turns, but right now the justices look like they're kind of poised to take a breath, kind of cool down the temperature. They've had two, like I said, very controversial terms. They've come under some scrutiny for ethics issues. So, you know, we'll have to see. Like I said, it's a snapshot. You know, remember those old Polaroid pictures, you know, where it took a while for them to come? You know, you'd had, I mean,
yeah.
I'm old, so.
Shake it like a Polaroid picture.
Yeah. That's kind of where we are right now. It's a little blurry, but we're going to get a clearer and clearer vision of that photograph over the next few months.
So, Jan, explain to our audience the significance of the so-called long conference and how it shapes the upcoming docket.
So, you know, the justices hand down these hugely controversial decisions in June, and then they head out of town. So over the summer, when they're off teaching at conferences or taking a break or going to the beach, you know, whatever they want to do, some of the cases kind of pile up over the summer. They do emergency cases, so nothing kind of gets lost in the shuffle. But when you have a case in the lower courts and you want the court to hear it, that piles up over the summer, and they have this long conference where they kind of consider all those cases and which ones they're going to take up. So on Friday of last week, we heard that the justices out of that long conference the day before had taken up a dozen more cases, including some pretty significant ones on social media. And that's a big theme this term so far already, social media and the role of government in regulating social media. So they added all that to the docket on Friday. We got a bunch of hundreds and hundreds of cases today. They said they're not going to take up. But again, it's all part of that conference that they do, and they'll continue to have these conferences now during the week, and as they add more cases to their docket as this term progresses, and they fill in some of those gaps in their schedule.
So you brought up the ethical concerns that the court has been dealing with over the last 6 or 7 months or so. Do we expect this to sort of hang over the new court term?
Yes, I do. And, you know, we saw justices. I was at a couple of the conferences over the summer, and two of the justices, Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Kagan, speaking at a different event, said that Justice Kavanaugh said that he hopes they would have their own code of conduct soon. Justice Kagan, on the other side of the ideological spectrum, indicated that she hopes that something is going to be in the works soon. Obviously, Democrats on Capitol Hill and in the Senate are really pushing these issues, especially since you've had those 6 justice conservative victories in some of those big cases. So we're kind of seeing this getting mired into some of the political machinations on the Hill, but the spotlight now very much on the justices to adopt kind of their own code of conduct. Now, doing that, there are 9 independent justices. They all have very different ideas. That's the challenge, and how you get the 9 of them to come together and agree on what they're going to do going forward, who would enforce it, some of those kind of things.
All right, Jan. And finally, I guess there are probably some cases that are sort of not on the national radar, but are significant for a lot of. Yeah. What else are you looking at?
Absolutely. And I don't mean to suggest that what they've got right now isn't important. It's just not a right to abortion, affirmative action, those kind of huge issues. So on civil rights and constitutional rights, so far what they're doing is kind of filling in the blanks. They ruled that you have a Second Amendment right to have a gun, right, in your home. But what does that really mean? So they're looking at whether or not people who are under restraining orders for domestic violence can be banned from owning a gun. I mean, that's an important question, but they've gotten the big question out of the way. So now they're just filling in the blanks on that. The same thing on voting rights. They've got another significant voting rights from South Carolina over racial redistricting and whether the Republicans in that state kind of diluted black voting power. That's an important question, but it doesn't really go to the core of what the voting rights is. And then, like I said, they've got some of those social media cases. The biggest issues right now, though, are about the role and structure of government. That sounds really boring, but it's about the administrative state, and that's actually very significant. The court is looking at a 40-year-old case that really gives administrative agencies a lot of power to interpret laws if Congress hasn't really made it clear. And so it takes Congress and courts out of some of these issues. And that's been something that conservatives have really been pushing out, the administrative state, and whether these agencies, these federal agencies, have too much power, whether or not Congress has to be more clear in how it passes some of these laws, and whether they're wrongly deferring to the agencies. That's a major issue. Like I said, doesn't sound like it's like, ooh, but it could have a significant impact. The question, though, is whether or not the court's going to swing for the fences this term. Whether or not you're going to see the Chief Justice, perhaps Justice Kavanaugh, maybe Justice Barrett, say, let's slow it down a little bit. Let's just go a little more incremental. That's what I would keep an eye out for this term.
All right, Jan Crawford for us. Great to chat with you, Jan, as always.
Great to chat with you guys.